But in the case of Tunisia, what happened was that the privatizations were dominated by the two families. In fact, that's basically what they did. They just sat, waited for things to be privatized. They were in a very, very good position to take advantage of it. So rather than privatization leading to development, you had privatization that led to stagnation and decay. All right, so that's one theme that has to change. And the final point here is at the last moment, and this happened also in Egypt as well as Tunisia, when Ben Ali basically saw the writing on the wall and that his days were numbered, he gives what I refer to as a reverse structural adjustment program. Meaning what? Meaning we're going to put the subsidies back on basic products and food, which they were taken off. We're going to create 300,000 state jobs. That's kind of against this model. With more or less Mubarak doing the same thing. So at the last moment, they were kind of tacitly admitting that there was something wrong. And if you look at what they're talking about in Yemen and in Jordan, it's the same thing. Basically going back on these IMF, World Bank structural adjustment programs. This has to be looked at, because if those programs continue in the way that they functioned before this crisis, well, I think that we're going to see some changes there regardless, quite frankly, because that was a great cause of the crisis. Now, I realize I don't have much more time. Is that right? 1 minute. All right, so the other, well, then let me just, I want to put it a little differently than Joe in terms of U.S. policy. I see what's happening here as a crisis for U.S. foreign policy, and not just a crisis, but a failure. That what we're looking at is a failure of a really post-war U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East that has emphasized security, counterinsurgency over development and human rights. All right? They did not know this crisis was coming. I feel like they're blindsided by it, and quite frankly, right now, they don't know what to do about it. What I see U.S. policy today is basically buying time. Buying time to try to figure out what to do in Egypt, what to do in Tunisia. And we have to look at this policy and look at ways that it can be improved in the future, that it can be changed. That it's not simply, it's not simply a problem of corruption and political repression among Arab countries. I think we can all agree to that. It's also a crisis in U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East that has to be addressed and changed. Okay, thank you.
Let me take a different approach, and maybe because I was in Cairo until the 19th, I only returned on the 19th. For me, I see what is going on now as a very positive development. I see it as people regaining their long-lost sense of pride, of community and solidarity. Let me share with you a couple of emails that I received. One on the 24th of January. This from a friend of mine who probably didn't miss a single demonstration or rally that took place in the last 3 years. But he had reached a point of, like, he was starting to give up. So this is the email that he sent to me on Monday, January 24th. You are missing out on some hilarious SHIT here. Tomorrow is supposed to witness some big-time demos. So I hear that it will be different because the Brotherhood and the Ultras, we can get back to the Ultras later, are participating. It took me a while to understand anything of what the Brotherhood are saying, which is basically nothing as usual. So I'm predicting a statement in the morning banning participation. And it turns out that the other one is the Ultras, who are soccer fans. And we can talk about the Ultras maybe in the discussion. On the 25th, I received an email from a former student of mine. She's from the middle class, upper middle class. And she said, like, I went out, had lunch, and came back, was completely uninterested in what might happen. Yet when I saw news pictures, heard about a couple of my friends who went to Tahrir, I felt confused yet jealous. I'm against the system. Yet there is this point that I haven't reached. maybe the complete unrest most of society fears. And I'm talking about those who live in different conditions and are unlike us in terms of standards and capabilities. And this is very important because there's a class aspect about this issue, about what's going on in Egypt, that's being totally ignored. Because the media here is focusing mainly on Cairo and Alexandria. But no one is talking about what's going on in industrial centers like Al-Mahalla or in Suez, which the first casualties, the first victims, the first martyrs fell in Suez, where 5 people were killed on the first day. This is another email that I just printed out now before coming that I received today on February 2nd from the same student. I went to Tahrir, and it was just beautiful. For once, people are calling for one thing, and it's not the African Cup. But she's aware of the fact that the regime had started its counterattack yesterday with Mubarak's speech. So she's saying, unlike the past 8 days now, I feel Egypt is split into halves. Did his speech get some of us to forget? Is it possible that people will just forget what they have accomplished over the past 8 days? So basically, you can sense the difference between the tone of my friend on the 24th, the day before everything started on the 25th. And by the way, all what happened was meant initially to be a day of protest against police brutality. Because the 25th of January is Police Day in Egypt. So this whole thing was intended just as a protest for police brutality. But then it took a life of its own. Let me share with you also a couple of stories that I heard from friends back home and things that I saw on TV that just like would hopefully further illustrate this point. Like I watched on an Arab satellite channel yesterday, a prisoner. Because when this whole uprising started, some people broke into prisons to release prisoners. But there was a prisoner who had refused to run away. He stayed there, and he said on TV that he had spent 6 years in prison, and he wasn't willing to go back to his family, to be arrested in front of his kids, and he had preferred to stay there to keep his sense of dignity. My friend told me also about a story that during the first day of demonstrations, like a person next to him was coughing, and he noticed that a nearby demonstrator was smoking. So he just asked him to put out his cigarette. On any other day, he would have received a very, very, very rude reply. But the guy who was smoking, he just apologized and put the cigarette out. On Friday night, when the demonstrators burned the headquarters of the ruling party, which is just across the street from the National Museum, and there was no police, no army, nor firemen there. The people organized a human chain around the museum to protect it from looting. And I'd like you to compare this to what happened in Baghdad when the US occupied Iraq and how Iraq's heritage was destroyed. Okay, I believe that what's going on at the moment is a quarrel and a conflict over this spirit. The regime is trying to break the spirit. It's trying to break the sense of community that people regained. It's using thugs, it's using its police forces, it's using its regional and international allies. And I believe that when Vice President Biden decided, like recently, that like just a couple of days ago, that Mubarak wasn't a dictator, he made it very, 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 very clear on which side he stood.